The cabin looked exactly like the photos Amanda had sent us. Better, actually. 2 stories of dark wood and river stone, a wraparound porch with rocking chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Stillwater Lake. The kind of place you see in magazines and think, that can't be real. But it was real, and it was ours for the weekend. This is incredible, my wife Sarah said from the passenger seat, as I pulled our SUV into the gravel driveway. Behind us, my brother Matt's truck and Kevin's sedan followed, kicking up dust in the late afternoon sun. We'd been planning this trip for months. 6 of us, me and Sarah, Matt and his girlfriend Jen, our friends Kevin and Amanda, all college buddies who'd stayed close over the years, though life had scattered us across different cities. This weekend was supposed to be a reunion, a chance to reconnect away from jobs and responsibilities and the constant noise of everyday life. The location was perfect for that. 20 miles from the nearest town, surrounded by the Ozark National Forest. No neighbors, no traffic, no cell service. Just us in the woods and the lake. Amanda had found the place on some rental website. Booked it for a steal. Off-season rates, she'd explained. The owner was practically giving away. As we climbed out of cars, I understood why someone might pay good money for this isolation. The silence was profound. No highway sounds, no planes overhead, no distant lawnmowers or barking dogs. Just wind in the trees and the occasional bird call. It's so quiet, Jen said, stretching after the long drive. I'd forgotten what actual quiet sounded like. Matt was already unloading bags from his truck. How far did we come down that dirt road? Felt like miles. About 3, I said. GPS lost signal 2 miles back. Good, Kevin said, grabbing his duffel. That means no work emails, no social media, nothing but quality time with you beautiful people. Amanda was standing on the porch, holding up a key she retrieved from under the mat. Who wants a grand tour? The inside of the cabin was as impressive as the outside. Exposed beam ceilings, a massive stone fireplace, leather furniture that looked expensive but comfortable. The kitchen was modern and well-stocked. Upstairs, there were 4 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom. This place must cost a fortune normally, Sarah said, running her hand along the smooth wood banister. Are you sure the owner knew what they were charging? Amanda shrugged. Their loss, our gain. They seemed eager to rent it out. Said it had been empty for a few months. We spent the next hour settling in, claiming bedrooms, unpacking supplies. We brought enough food and booze for a week, let alone a weekend. Matt fired up the grill on the back deck, while the rest of us prepped dinner. Steaks, baked potatoes, salad. Simple food that tasted incredible after the long drive. As the sun set over the lake, we sat on the porch with our drinks, watching the water turn from blue to gold to dark mirror. The trees surrounding the property were old-growth pine and oak, tall enough to make you feel small. Beautiful, but there was something about them that made me slightly uneasy. Maybe it was how dense they were, how the spaces between the trunks disappeared into darkness, even though the sun hadn't fully set. To old friends, Kevin said, raising his beer, and to getting the hell away from civilization for a few days. We clinked glasses and bottles, and for a while, everything felt perfect. We told stories from college, laughed about stupid things we'd done, caught each other up on our lives. Sarah and I had just bought our first house. Matt and Jen were talking about getting engaged. Kevin had recently been promoted. Amanda was planning a career change. Normal life things. The kind of conversation that feels important when you're with people who actually care. Around 10, we moved inside. The temperature had dropped and the porch lights were attracting too many moths. Matt built a fire in the fireplace while I opened another bottle of wine. The cabin felt cozy, safe, warm against the darkness outside. This is exactly what I needed, Jen said, curling up on the couch with Matt. No distractions, no stress. Just this. Midnight came faster than expected. Kevin and Amanda headed up to bed first, tired from driving. Jen followed soon after. That left me, Sarah, and Matt around the dying fire. "I'm going to get more wood," Matt said, standing and stretching. "Keep this going a bit longer." "There's a shed out back," I said. "Saw it when we were grilling." "Be right back." Matt grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen and headed out the back door. Sarah and I sat in comfortable silence, watching the embers glow. I was thinking about how lucky we were to have friends like this, to have a weekend like this ahead of us. The back door slammed open. Matt stood in the doorway, breathing hard. His flashlight was shaking in his hand, the beam dancing across the walls. "Matt, what's wrong?" Sarah was on her feet immediately. My brother's face was pale, his eyes wide. "There's something out there." "What do you mean, something?" I walked over to him. "Like an animal?" "No, not an animal. I heard it walking, in the trees behind the shed." He swallowed hard. "The footsteps were wrong, Chris. Too heavy, too deliberate. And when I shined my light toward the sound..." "What? What did you see?" "It moved, behind a tree, but it was tall, taller than any person should be." I looked at Sarah. She was frowning, concerned but skeptical. "Matt, you probably saw a deer. Or a bear. This is the woods. There are..." "It wasn't fucking deer," Matt snapped. Then softer, "Sorry. I'm sorry. But I know what I saw. It was standing upright. And it was watching me. I could feel it watching me." The three of us stood there in the living room, the fire crackling behind us, the darkness pressing against the windows. "Okay," I said, "let's go look together. All three of us." "Chris, I don't think," Sarah started. "We should check it out. Make sure everything's secure. It's probably nothing, but we should look." We grabbed flashlights and went out the back door. The night air was cold, much colder than it had been earlier. Our breath came out in visible puffs. The silence from earlier was gone, replaced by an oppressive quiet that felt wrong. No crickets, no frogs, no rustling in the underbrush. Just nothing. "There," Matt whispered, pointing his flashlight toward the tree line. That's where I heard it. We walked toward the trees slowly, our flashlights cutting overlapping circles in the darkness. The shed was about 30 yards from the cabin, a simple wooden structure for storing firewood and tools. Beyond it, the forest was a wall of black. I was about to say we should head back inside when Sarah grabbed my arm. "Chris, look at the trees." I followed her gaze. All around the cabin, carved into the bark of the pine trees, were symbols, crude marks, deep cuts forming patterns I didn't recognize. They looked old, weathered, but I was certain they hadn't been there earlier. We would have noticed them during dinner, during our time on the porch. "What are those?" Matt asked. I walked closer to one of the marked trees, shining my light directly on the carving. The cuts were deep, the wood beneath still pale and fresh. I touched the groove. My finger came away sticky with sap. "These are new," I said. "These were made recently. Maybe today." Why would someone carve symbols around the cabin? Sarah's voice was tight with worry. "Maybe they've always been here," Matt offered, though he didn't sound convinced. "Maybe we just didn't notice in the daylight." I was about to respond when I saw movement in my peripheral vision. Something at the edge of the clearing, just beyond the reach of our flashlights. "There," I said quietly. "Do you see it?" We all turned our lights toward the spot. For a moment, there was nothing. Then my eyes adjusted and I saw it. Something was standing between two trees. Tall, at least 7 feet, maybe more. It wasn't moving, just standing there, a dark shape against the darker forest. "What the hell is that?" Matt breathed. I took a step forward, try and get a better look. My flashlight beam swept across the figure, and it moved. Not quickly, not frantically, just deliberately stepped behind a tree, smoothly and purposefully, like it knew we'd seen it and didn't care. "Did you see that?" Sarah's voice was shaking now. It moved like it was intelligent, like it knew what it was doing. We stood frozen for a long moment. Flashlights pointed at the tree it had disappeared behind, waiting for it to emerge, to show itself, to do something. Nothing. The forest was completely still again. Silent. "We're going inside," I said. "Right now." None of them argued. We backed away from the tree line, keeping our flashlights pointed at the forest, and hurried to the cabin. Once inside, Matt locked the back door while I checked the front. Sarah was already moving through the house, checking windows, making sure everything was secured. What was that? Jen was standing at the top of the stairs, rubbing sleep from her eyes. I heard the door slam. "Nothing," Matt said quickly. "Just thought we heard something outside. Probably just a bear." But the look he gave me over Jen's shoulder said otherwise. We both knew what we'd seen wasn't a bear. Wasn't any animal we recognized. Kevin and Amanda came downstairs too, wondering about the commotion. We told them the same story. Thought we heard an animal. Checked it out. Everything was fine. No need to worry anyone else until we understood what we were dealing with. Eventually, everyone went back to bed. Sarah and I lay in the darkness of our room, neither of us sleeping. "What do you think it was?" she whispered. "I don't know. Maybe just shadows. Maybe we psyched ourselves out." "You don't believe that?" "No," I admitted. "I don't." Through the window, I could see the trees swaying in a breeze I couldn't feel from inside. The symbols on the bark were invisible in the darkness, but I knew they were there. Fresh cuts, recent marks. Someone or something had been here today, had marked the trees around our cabin, and it was still out there in the woods, watching. I finally fell asleep sometime after 3, exhausted from travel and stress. When I woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows. Sarah was already up, sitting in the chair by the window, staring out at the forest. "Morning," I said groggily. She didn't turn around. "Chris, come look at this." I got up and joined her at the window. In the daylight, I could see the symbols on the trees clearly now. There were dozens of them, forming a rough circle around the cabin. But that wasn't what Sarah was pointing at. On the ground near the tree line, there were marks in the dirt, not footprints exactly, more like impressions, deep gouges in the earth, leading from the forest toward the cabin and back again. "Something was walking around the cabin last night," Sarah said quietly. "After we went to bed, something heavy enough to leave those marks." I looked at the impressions. They came within maybe 15 feet of the cabin, circling it completely, before heading back into the woods. "We should leave," I said. "Pack up and leave. Right now." Sarah nodded. "I'll wake the others." But when we tried to start the cars 20 minutes later, none of them would turn over. My SUV's battery was completely dead. Matt's truck wouldn't even click. Kevin's sedan started, but the engine died immediately and wouldn't restart. 3 vehicles, all dead. Matt looked at me, and I saw my own fear reflected in his eyes. "We're trapped," he said. We stood in the driveway staring at the 3 dead vehicles, the morning sun doing nothing to warm the cold dread settling in my chest. Matt was under the hood of his truck, checking connections, looking for anything obvious. Kevin was doing the same with the sedan. I'd already popped the hood on my SUV and confirmed what I'd suspected. The battery was completely drained, and there was no visible reason why. "This doesn't make sense," Kevin said, slamming his hood closed. "All 3 vehicles? At the same time? What are the odds?" Jen was standing on the porch, hugging herself despite the mild temperature. Amanda had gone back inside to make coffee, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. Sarah was sitting on the porch steps, phone in hand, even though we all knew there was no signal. We hike out, I said. It's 20 miles to the main road, but we can make it by this afternoon if we move fast. Matt wiped his hands on his jeans and nodded. Yeah, we follow the dirt road back the way we came. Can't get lost if we stay on the road. It seemed like a solid plan. We packed light bags with water and snacks, left most of our stuff at the cabin. If we made good time, we could reach town, get help, come back with a tow truck, or at least some jumper cables and new batteries. We started walking at 9:30 in the morning. The dirt road stretched ahead of us, winding through the dense forest. The trees on either side were massive, their canopy blocking out most of the sunlight. It was cooler under the trees, almost cold. We walked in pairs, me and Sarah in front, Matt and Jen in the middle, Kevin and Amanda bringing up the rear. For the first hour, we made good progress. The road was easy to follow, relatively flat, and we maintained a steady pace. We should have been covering 3 or 4 miles an hour. But when we checked our watches after 2 hours of walking, something felt wrong. We should have covered at least 6 miles by now, maybe 7. We should be seeing signs of civilization, power lines, cleared areas, something. Instead, the forest just kept going. The same dense trees, the same shadows, the same oppressive quiet. Are we going in circles? Amanda asked. No, Matt said firmly. We've been walking straight. Haven't turned off the road once. But doubt was creeping in. The road looked the same as it had 2 hours ago. The same curve ahead, the same trees, the same everything. Then Sarah stopped walking. She was staring ahead, her face pale. Chris, she said quietly, look. I followed her gaze and felt my stomach drop. There, maybe 100 yards ahead, was the cabin, our cabin. The same porch, the same vehicles in the driveway, the same everything. We'd walked in a complete circle. That's impossible, Kevin said. We didn't turn around. We didn't leave the road. How is that possible? Nobody had an answer. Jen sat down on the dirt road, put her head in her hands. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. Matt crouched beside her, trying to comfort her, but his face was as confused and scared as hers. Amanda pulled out her phone, tried to use the GPS even though there was no signal. The screen showed our location as a blank space. No roads, no landmarks, nothing. Just a blue dot in the middle of nowhere. Okay, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We try again, but this time we mark the trees as we go. Make sure we're actually making progress. We found a sharp rock, and Matt carved arrows into tree bark every 100 yards or so. Simple marks pointing back toward the cabin, showing our direction of travel. We started walking again, slower this time, paying closer attention to everything around us. 1 hour passed. 2 hours. 3. We should have been 6 or 7 miles away from the cabin by now, well beyond where we'd ended up last time. But I was starting to recognize trees. A particular oak with a split trunk, a pine with a broken branch. And then we saw them, Matt's arrow marks, the ones we'd made hours ago. We were back at the cabin again. This is impossible, Kevin said again, but with less conviction this time. He knew, just like the rest of us were starting to know, that impossible didn't matter. This was happening. The forest was looping us back, no matter which direction we walked, no matter how carefully we followed the road. We were trapped when we got back to the cabin. It was nearly 4 in the afternoon. We'd been walking for over 6 hours and had nothing to show for it except sore feet and growing terror. Amanda went straight to the kitchen and started going through cabinets. What are you doing? Sarah asked, looking for a landline. There has to be a phone. Every cabin has a phone for emergencies, but there wasn't one. No phone jack, no landline, nothing. The cabin had clearly been built or renovated in the era of cell phones, when landlines are considered obsolete. There has to be something we're missing, Matt said. some explanation for this. Roads don't loop back on themselves. Physics doesn't work that way. But Kevin was looking at his phone, scrolling through photos he'd taken during our hikes. "Look at this," he said, holding up the screen. The photo showed the road ahead, trees on either side, normal forest. But when he zoomed in on the background, there was something wrong with the trees. They seemed to blur together, like a photograph that was slightly out of focus. And in that blur, if you looked closely, you could see shapes, patterns, almost like the forest itself was moving, rearranging. I took the phone from him and looked closer. The shapes in the blurred areas weren't random. They formed the same symbols we'd seen carved into the trees around the cabin. The same crude markings, but these were made from the forest itself, from the way the trees and shadows aligned. "The woods are doing this," I said. "Somehow, the forest itself is keeping us here." It sounded insane, but no more insane than walking for hours and ending up where we started. Sarah was moving through the cabin now, opening drawers, checking closets. There has to be information about this place. Previous renters, the owners, something. She found it in the small desk in the fireplace. A guest book, old and worn, with entries dating back decades. We gathered around as Sarah flipped through the pages. Most entries were normal. Families thanking the owners for a wonderful stay. Couples celebrating anniversaries. Friends enjoying a weekend away. But as she got further back, the entries started to change. 5 years ago, an entry read, "Beautiful cabin, but the woods feel wrong. Heard something walking around outside at night. Glad to leave." 3 years ago, "Don't go into the forest after dark. Just trust me on this. Stay inside." 2 years ago, we saw it. The thing in the woods. Tall, wrong, not human. We left on the second day. Don't stay for the third night. The most recent entry was from 6 months ago. It was longer than the others, written in shaky handwriting. "To whoever comes after us, there is something in these woods, something old. It doesn't want you here." We saw the symbols on the trees, heard the footsteps at night. On the third night, it came to the cabin. We barely made it out. The car started for us, but only after we apologized, after we left offerings at the tree line. I don't know what it is or what it wants, but respect it. Don't go into the woods. Don't acknowledge it if you see it. And whatever you do, leave before the third night. The room was silent after Sarah finished reading. Today was only the second day. We had one more night before. Before what? Before whatever happened on the third night. "This is someone's idea of a sick joke," Kevin said, but his voice lacked conviction. "People write fake scary stuff in guest books all the time, trying to freak out the next renters." But Amanda was shaking her head. She'd gone pale, her hands trembling as she held her phone. "I need to tell you something. When I booked this place, I saw warnings. Online reviews that mentioned weird things happening, people leaving early. But the price was so good, and I thought it was just people trying to scare others, you know? Urban legend stuff. I didn't think." She trailed off, looking at each of us. "I'm sorry. I should have told you. Should have picked somewhere else." "It's not your fault," Jen said quietly, though her eyes were red from crying. "None of us could have known this was real." Matt was pacing, running his hands through his hair. "Okay, so we can't drive out, can't walk out. What about the lake? We could follow the shoreline, maybe find another property, someone with a working phone, or a boat." It was worth trying. We walked down to the lake as the sun started to set, casting long shadows across the water. Stillwater Lake was smaller than I'd thought, maybe a mile across. The shoreline was rocky and overgrown, but walkable. We started following it north, away from the cabin, moving as quickly as the terrain allowed. But after an hour of scrambling over rocks and pushing through brush, we found ourselves back at the cabin's dock. The lake had looped us too, impossibly bringing us back to where we started. It's the whole area, Sarah said, staring out the water, not just the road. The entire property is contained somehow, like we're in a bubble we can't break out of. The sun was setting fast now, the temperature dropping. None of us wanted to be outside after dark, not after reading those guest book entries. We retreated to the cabin, locked all the doors and windows, turned on every light we could find. Dinner was a quiet, tense affair. Nobody had much appetite, but we forced ourselves to eat, needing the energy, the normalcy. Afterward, we gathered in the living room. Matt built another fire, more for the psychological comfort than the warmth. We need a plan, I said, for tonight and for tomorrow. If we can't leave, we need to figure out what this thing wants, how to survive until... I didn't finish the sentence. Until what? Until someone noticed we were missing? Amanda had told her boss she'd be off the grid for the weekend. We'd all told people we were going camping, out of touch. Nobody would start worrying for days. The guest book said to leave offerings, Kevin said. Maybe we should try that. Put food or something at the tree line. Show we respect whatever this is. It seemed like the only actionable plan we had. We gathered items from the kitchen. Bread, fruit, some of the steaks we hadn't cooked yet. Matt found a bottle of expensive whiskey he'd brought for the trip. We put all in a bag, and as the last light faded from the sky, I volunteered to take it outside. I'm coming with you, Sarah said. No way you're going out there alone. We stepped onto the back porch together, the offerings in hand. The forest was already dark. The spaces between the trees, absolute blackness. I walked slowly toward the tree line, Sarah right behind me, and placed the bag at the base of one of the marked trees. We mean no disrespect, I said, feeling foolish but desperate. We didn't know this was your territory. Please, just let us leave. Silence. Nothing but the sound of wind in the branches. We backed away toward the cabin, not turning our backs on the forest. Just as we reached the porch steps, I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps moving through the forest. Not toward us, but circling. Going around the cabin slowly, methodically. I grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her inside, slamming the door and locking it. It's out there, I said to the others. It's walking around the cabin. We all froze, listening. The footsteps were clear now, audible even from inside. They moved around the right side of the cabin, slow and measured. Then the left side, then the back again, circling us. Matt went to the window and peered out through a gap in the curtains. His face went white. It's at the tree line, he whispered, just standing there, watching the cabin. I joined him at the window, looked out into the darkness. At first, I saw nothing. Then my eyes adjusted and I saw it. A shape darker than the surrounding darkness, standing between two trees. Tall, impossibly tall, at least 8 feet. It wasn't moving, just standing there. But I could feel its attention on the cabin, on us like a physical weight. What do we do? Jen asked, her voice barely audible. We stay inside, I said. Lock everything. Stay together. Wait for morning. It was the only plan we had. We checked every door, every window, made sure everything was secured. Then we gathered in the living room, all 6 of us, nobody willing to go upstairs, to be separated. The footsteps continued outside, circling the cabin over and over. Sometimes they'd stop for long minutes, and we'd hear nothing but our own breathing. Then they'd start again, always deliberate, always slow. Around midnight, they stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the footsteps. We waited, listening, but heard nothing. Maybe it left, Amanda whispered. Maybe the offerings worked. But I didn't believe that, and neither did anyone else. We sat in the silence for an hour, 2 hours. Nobody slept. We were too afraid to close our eyes. Then around 2 in the morning, Kevin's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, frowning. That's impossible. There's no signal. He looked at the screen, and his face went gray. What? Sarah asked. What is it? Kevin turned the phone around so we could see. It was a photo sent from an unknown number. A photo of us, all 6 of us, sitting in the living room, taken from outside, through the window, taken right now. We all looked at the window simultaneously, but the curtains were drawn. Nobody could see in. Nobody should have been able to take that photo. Then Jen's phone buzzed. Matt's, Amanda's, Sarah's, mine. All of us receiving the same message at the same time, from the same unknown number. Another photo. This one showed us from a different angle, from the back of the cabin. And in this photo, you could see something else. A 7th figure, standing in the corner of the room with us, tall and dark and wrong. But when we all spun around to look at that corner, there was nothing there. The room was empty, except for the 6 of us. Sarah's phone buzzed again. A 3rd photo, and this time my blood turned to ice. It was a close-up of the back door, the locked back door. And in the photo, clear as day, you could see the handle turning. Someone was trying to get in. We all heard it then, the sound of the doorknob rattling from the kitchen. Something was at the back door trying to get inside. The doorknob rattled again, the sound echoing through the silent cabin. We all stayed frozen in the living room, staring toward the kitchen with the back door let outside. The handle turned slowly, deliberately, testing the lock. Matt grabbed the fireplace poker, the only thing resembling a weapon within reach. Kevin moved to stand between the kitchen and the women, his hands balled into fists like he actually thought he could fight whatever was out there. The rattling stopped. Silence again, but worse now because we were waiting for what came next. I moved slowly toward the kitchen, my heart hammering so hard I could feel in my throat. The back door was still closed, still locked. Through the small window in the door, I could see nothing but darkness. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. Another photo. This one showed the front door, the handle turning. It's at the front now, I said, my voice coming out as a harsh whisper. We all moved to the living room windows, peering through gaps in the curtains. In the darkness outside, barely visible in the porch light, something stood on the front porch. The same tall, dark shape we'd seen at the tree line. Up close now, only a few feet away, separated from us by just a door and a wall. It reached toward the door with what might have been a hand, and we heard the front doorknob begin to rattle. Check the upstairs windows, Sarah said. Make sure they're all locked. Jen and Amanda ran upstairs while the rest of us stayed frozen, watching the front door handle turn back and forth. The lock held, but for how long? The thing outside wasn't breaking down the door or smashing windows. It was testing, probing, looking for a way in. Like it knew the layout of the cabin, knew every entry point. Matt's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and swore. It sent another photo. Of us, right now, from behind us. We all spun around but saw nothing. The living room was empty except for us, the fire crackling in the fireplace, shadows dancing on the walls. But the photo on Matt's phone showed clearly a 7th figure standing in the room with us, tall and dark, positioned right behind where Sarah was standing. Upstairs, we heard a scream. Jen. We all ran for the stairs, Matt taking them 2 at a time with the fireplace poker raised. We found Jen and Amanda in the hallway, pointing at one of the bedroom windows. The window was still closed, still locked, but there were marks on the glass, long scratches, like something with claws had dragged them down the pane from outside. Except we were on the 2nd floor. Nothing should have been able to reach that window unless it was at least 10 feet tall. It's trying to get in, Amanda said, her voice shaking. It's testing every window, every door. looking for a weakness. We went through the entire second floor together, checking every window, every lock. They were all secure, but we found more scratch marks on 2 other windows. Long, deep gouges in the glass that hadn't been there before. Whatever was outside was strong enough to damage the windows, but wasn't breaking them. Not yet. Was it choosing not to, or did it have to follow some kind of rules? The guest book had mentioned offerings, mentioned respect. Maybe there were boundaries it couldn't cross unless we did something to invite it in. We retreated back downstairs, all 6 of us staying together in the living room. The house was completely silent now. No footsteps outside, no rattling doorknobs, nothing. Just oppressive quiet and the feeling of being watched. We should try to sleep in shifts, I said. 2 people awake at all times, watching. If anything changes, wake everyone else. Nobody liked the idea of sleeping, but we were exhausted from hours of walking, and the adrenaline crash was hitting hard. We arranged ourselves around the living room. Some on the couch, some on the floor with couch cushions and blankets. Matt and I took the first watch. The others eventually drifted into uneasy sleep, though I could tell from their breathing that most of them weren't deeply under. Every small sound, the house settling, the fire popping, made someone twitch or shift position. Around 4 a.m, Matt nudged me and pointed toward the front window. I looked out through a gap in the curtains and saw it standing at the tree line again. The same position it had been in earlier, just watching the cabin. In the faint moonlight, I could make out more details now. It was tall, maybe 8 feet, covered in what looked like bark and moss. Its limbs were too long, proportion wrong. Where its face should have been, there was just a twisted mass of wood and shadow. It stood absolutely still, and somehow that was worse than if it had been moving. The stillness suggested patience, like it had all the time in the world to wait for us to make a mistake. We woke Kevin and Amanda for the next shift and tried to get some sleep ourselves. I managed maybe an hour of fitful dozing before the sun started to rise. Dawn came slowly, gray light filtering through the curtains. We were all awake by 6, groggy and terrified, but alive. The thing in the woods was gone when we checked the windows in daylight. The forest looked normal again, just trees and undergrowth, peaceful and quiet. But the scratch marks on the upstairs windows were still there, and the offerings we'd left at the tree line had vanished, not eaten or disturbed, completely gone, bag and all, like they'd never existed. 3rd day, Kevin said quietly. We all knew what that meant. The guest book had warned about the 3rd night. Whatever was going to happen, it would happen tonight. Sarah found more entries in the guest book that we'd missed the night before. Flipping toward the back, she discovered pages that had been torn out, ragged edges where someone had ripped them free. But one entry remained, older than the others, written in faded ink from decades ago. "This land is not ours," it read. The boundary was marked long before the cabin was built. We were told not to cross it, not to build here. But we did anyway. And now something watches from the woods. It doesn't forgive trespass. It doesn't forget. The only way to leave is to pay what's owed, but we don't know what payment it wants. God help whoever stays for the 3rd night. What boundary? Matt asked. There's no property line markers, no fence, nothing. But Amanda was already moving through the cabin, searching. She found what she was looking for in a drawer in the kitchen, an old survey map of the property, yellowed with age. She spread it on the kitchen table, and we gathered around. The map showed the original property line from when the land was first surveyed in the 1800s. A specific boundary was marked with red ink, forming a rough circle around a section of the forest. Written in the margin were the words "protected territory, do not develop." But someone had developed it anyway. The cabin had been built 15 years ago, according to property records Amanda found with the map. And according to the survey, the cabin sat right in the middle of the protected zone. We built on sacred ground, Sarah said, or protected ground, or whatever. We crossed a boundary we didn't know existed. I looked at the symbols carved into the trees around the cabin, the same symbols that had appeared in Kevin's photos. They matched symbols on the old survey map, boundary markers, warnings. Whoever had built the cabin had either ignored them or never known what they meant. And now, 15 years later, we were paying the price for someone else's trespass. The offerings didn't work, Jen said. We tried to show respect, but it wasn't enough. Matt was studying the map more closely. Look at this. There are notes on the survey, old handwriting. It says boundary established by Treaty 1847, and then Guardian of the Deep Woods, do not disturb. Someone knew about this. Someone made an agreement with whatever lives out there. He pointed to another notation. And here it says violations will be answered with equal measure. What does that mean? Before anyone could answer, we heard something outside. Not footsteps this time. The sound was splintering. We ran to the back window and saw it. The offerings weren't the only thing that had disappeared overnight. One of the marked trees had been destroyed. Not cut down, not knocked over by wind. Destroyed. The trunk was shredded, torn apart. It was scattered in pieces across the ground. And in the center of the destruction, carved into the earth itself, was a message. Deep gouges in the dirt forming Crude letters. 3 for 6. 3 for 6, Kevin repeated. What does that mean? But I was starting to understand, a cold dread settling in my stomach. There are 6 of us. It's saying 3 for 6. 3 of something for 6 of us. Amanda's face had gone white. 3 nights. We violated the boundary, all 6 of us. And tonight is the 3rd night. She looked at each of us, tears starting to stream down her face. It's going to take 3 of us. That's the payment. 3 lives for 6 trespassers. Equal measure. The room erupted in panicked voices. Jen was crying. Kevin was saying it couldn't be true. There had to be another explanation. Matt was insisting we had to try to leave again, to find a way out before nightfall. But I was thinking about the guest book entries, about people who'd left before the 3rd night. They'd survived by leaving offerings and getting out. But we couldn't get out. The forest had us trapped. And if we couldn't leave, then the only option was to give it what it wanted. We're not sacrificing anyone, Sarah said firmly. There has to be another way. We fight it, we barricade ourselves in, we survive the night. But even as she said it, I could see the doubt in her eyes. What could we do against something that could tear apart trees with its bare hands? Something that could send us walking in circles for hours, that could manipulate the forest itself? We spent the days searching the cabin for anything useful. Matt found an old rifle in a locked closet, but there were only 3 shells for it. Kevin found a toolbox and started reinforcing the doors with extra boards and nails. We moved furniture to block windows, created barriers, did everything we could think of to fortify our position, but it all felt futile. If the thing outside really wanted to get in, no amount of wood and nails would stop it. As the sun started to set on the 3rd day, we gathered in the living room one more time. The fire was built up. Every light in the cabin was on. We had the rifle, the fireplace poker, kitchen knives. Pathetic weapons against something that could send photos to our phones from nowhere, that could mark trees and destroy them overnight, that had been guarding this forest since before any of us were born. Maybe it's bluffing, Kevin said without conviction. Maybe it's just trying to scare us away. But the scratches on the upstairs windows said otherwise. The destroyed tree said otherwise. The message carved in the earth said otherwise. 3 for 6. Equal measure. Payment for trespass. The sun disappeared behind the trees and darkness fell fast. We waited in the lit living room, sitting close together, weapons in hand. For the first hour, nothing happened. The forest was quiet. No footsteps, no movement, nothing. Maybe the fortifications worked. Jen whispered. "Maybe it can't get in." Then the lights went out. All of them simultaneously. The fire in the fireplace flickered and died despite having plenty of wood. We were plunged into complete darkness. I fumbled for my phone, turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, but seemed weaker than it should be, like the dark itself was absorbing the light. Around me, the others were doing the same, phone lights clicking on one by one. That's when we heard it. Footsteps on the roof. Heavy, deliberate footsteps walking across the cabin roof from one end to the other, back and forth, back and forth. Then they stopped. Silence. We all stood frozen. Phone lights pointed at the ceiling, waiting. The ceiling cracked. Not a small crack. A massive split that ran the length of the living room, plaster, and dust raining down on us. Something was coming through the roof. Upstairs. Matt shouted, "Get to the bedrooms. Lock the doors." We ran for the stairs, stumbling in the darkness and chaos. But Jen tripped, fell hard on the stairs. Matt stopped to help her up, and that's when it came through the ceiling. A massive arm, thick as a tree trunk, covered in bark and moss, reaching down to the hole in the roof. It grabbed Matt around the waist before he could move. "Matt!" Jen screamed, grabbing onto him. Sarah and I ran back down, trying to pull him free. But the grip was too strong. Matt's ribs were creaking under the pressure. "Let go!" he shouted at us. "It's me or all of us. Just let go." Kevin was trying to help, but the arm was lifting Matt up, pulling him toward the hole in the ceiling. Jen was sobbing, still holding onto Matt's legs. Matt looked at her with tears in his eyes. "I love you," he said. "I'm sorry. Just let go." And then he kicked free of her grip, and the arm pulled him up to the ceiling and into the darkness. We heard him scream, the sound moving across the roof, then into the forest. The scream got farther away, farther, until it was gone. Jen collapsed on the stairs, sobbing uncontrollably. Sarah was crying too, gripping my arm so tight it hurt. We just watched my brother get taken by that thing, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. The arm came back. It reached to the hole again, sweeping across the living room like it was searching. Amanda ran for the back door, fumbling with the locks. "I have to get out. I can't stay here." Kevin tried to stop her, but she was beyond reason, finally getting the door open and running out into the darkness. We heard her screaming in the woods, the sound of branches breaking, her voice getting farther away. Then silence. "Close the door," I shouted. Kevin slammed it shut and locked it, but it was too late. The thing had taken Amanda two down. One more to go to make it 3 for 6. Equal measure. The arm retreated back through the ceiling. The house was quiet again except for Jen sobbing and our ragged breathing. We stood in the darkness, phone lights shaking in our trembling hands. "We have to run," Kevin said. "Split up, run different directions. Maybe some of us can make it." But I knew that wouldn't work. The forest would just loop us back, or the thing would pick us off one by one in the darkness. We were trapped, and it was hunting us. It had taken Matt and Amanda. It needed one more. The question was which one of us would be next. Sarah grabbed my hand. "Chris, I need to tell you something." Before she could finish, we heard footsteps again. Not on the roof this time. Inside the cabin, coming from upstairs. Heavy, slow footsteps walking across the second-floor hallway, approaching the stairs. It was inside. The thing was inside the cabin with us, and it was coming down the stairs. The footsteps descended the stairs slowly, each one a heavy thud that shook the walls. We backed away toward the kitchen, our phone lights pointed at the staircase, but revealing nothing except darkness. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. We could feel it there, just beyond the reach of our lights, watching us, waiting. Jen was still on the floor where she collapsed after Matt was taken, Her sobs reduced to quiet whimpering. Kevin helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as she swayed unsteadily. Sarah kept her grip on my hand, squeezing so tight my fingers were going numb. "We need to move," I whispered. "Get to one of the bedrooms upstairs, lock ourselves in." It was the only plan I could think of. The downstairs was compromised. The thing was between us and any exit. Our only option was to go up, to find a room we could barricade, and pray we could survive until morning. Kevin nodded and started helping Jen toward the stairs. We moved as a group, staying close, phone lights sweeping the darkness. As we reached the base of the stairs, I could see the hallway above. Empty. No sign of the thing that had just walked down. Had it moved? Was it hiding? Or was it waiting for us to make a mistake? We climbed the stairs quickly, every step creaking under our weight. The hallway stretched before us, doors to bedrooms on either side. We chose the master bedroom at the end of the hall, the one with the most solid door and a bathroom attached. Once inside, Kevin and I pushed a heavy dresser against the door, while Sarah helped Jen to the bed. The scratch marks on the bedroom window were still visible in our phone lights, long gouges in the glass that seemed even deeper now. We checked the bathroom. No windows, no other entrance. It would have to do. We huddled together in the bedroom, listening. The house was quiet again, but we could feel the wrongness of it, the sense that we were being watched even through walls. Hours passed in tense silence. Jen had gone into shock, staring at nothing, barely responding when we spoke to her. Sarah stayed close to her, trying to provide what comfort she could. Kevin and I took turns watching the door, the window, straining to hear any sound that might warn us the thing was coming back. Around what I estimated was 3 a.m, Kevin pulled out the old survey map we brought upstairs. He studied it by phone light, tracing the boundary markers with his finger. "I think I understand," he said quietly. The boundary wasn't just about the land. Look at the dates on this map. The treaty in 1847, that's when white settlers were pushing into this area. Whatever lives in these woods, it made an agreement with someone. Stay out of this territory, respect the boundary, and it would leave people alone. He pointed to the notes in the margin. But someone broke the agreement, built the cabin right in the middle of protected land. And every group of people who stays here is paying for that violation. I looked at the map, at the circle marked around what was now the cabin's location. So it's not really about us specifically. It's about anyone who occupies the space. "That doesn't make it better," Sarah said. "Matt and Amanda are still gone, and it still wants one more." Kevin shook his head. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. Why 3? Why not all 6 of us? What's the logic?" I thought about the message carved in the earth. 3 for 6. Equal measure. "Maybe it's proportional," I said. 6 of us violated the boundary by being here. But we're not the ones who built the cabin, who actually destroyed the sacred ground. So we only pay half? 3 deaths for 6 trespassers. It was grim mathematics, trying to understand the rules of something that operated on logic we couldn't fully comprehend. But if we could understand the rules, maybe we could survive them. Sarah was looking at her phone, scrolling through the photos the thing had sent us earlier. "Look at these again. Really look at them." She held up the image that had shown all 6 of us in the living room with the 7th figure standing among us. In this photo, the figure is standing closest to Amanda. And in this one, she swiped to another image. It's near Matt. It was showing us who it would take. It had already chosen them. She looked at the next photo, the one that had shown us in the bedroom. And here, it's standing behind Jen. Jen, who had been staring blankly at the wall, suddenly focused. Her eyes went wide. "It's going to take me next. I'm the 3rd one." Kevin immediately moved to her side. "No, we're not letting that happen. We'll protect you, But Jen was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. Matt died trying to protect me. I can't let anyone else die because of me. I won't. She stood up before any of us could stop her and walked to the dresser blocking the door. Jen, don't, Sarah said, moving toward her. But Jen was already pushing at the dresser, and it was too heavy for Sarah to stop her alone. Kevin and I ran to help, tried to hold the furniture in place, but Jen was desperate, giving her strength we couldn't match. Please, she sobbed. Please just let me go. Let me end this. It's the only way you'll survive. She shoved the dresser hard enough to move it a few inches, creating a gap by the door. That was all it took. The door exploded inward, ripping off its hinges. The thing that came through wasn't entirely physical, more like concentrated darkness in the rough shape of something humanoid. It reached for Jen with arms too long, fingers like branches, and she didn't fight. She just closed her eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry," before it grabbed her and pulled her back through the doorway. We heard her being dragged down the hallway. Down the stairs, the sound of the back door smashing open. Then nothing. 3 for 6. The payment was complete. Kevin collapsed against the wall, sliding down to sit on the floor. His face was blank, expression hollow. "They're all gone," he said. "Matt, Amanda, Jen, all gone." Sarah was crying silently, and I was somewhere beyond tears, beyond feeling anything except a numb kind of horror. We sat in the destroyed bedroom as the first light of dawn began to filter through the scratched window. The thing didn't come back. As the sun rose higher, we could hear birds starting to sing in the forest. Normal sounds, like the nightmare of the night had never happened. When we finally got the courage to go downstairs, we found the back door hanging open, cool morning air flowing in. The offerings we'd left were back, sitting on the kitchen table. The bag, the food, the whiskey, all of it exactly as we'd arranged it, like the thing had returned what it didn't need. Outside, the destroyed tree had been cleared away, the message carved in the earth smoothed over, and when we checked our phones, all the photos it had sent were gone, deleted, no evidence they'd ever existed. We walked out to where the cars were parked. Kevin tried a sedan first. It started immediately, engine running smooth. My SUV started too. The vehicles were working again. We stood in the driveway in the early morning light, looking at the forest around us. It seemed peaceful now, just trees and shadows and the normal sounds of nature. Like nothing had happened, like 3 people hadn't been taken in the night. "We should go," Kevin said, "before it changes its mind." We threw our belongings in the cars without bothering to pack properly, just grabbed bags and ran. I didn't look back at the cabin as we drove down the dirt road. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, arms wrapped around herself, staring straight ahead. We drove for maybe 10 minutes before we saw it, the main road, exactly where it should be. No loops, no impossible geography. The forest was letting us leave. When we reached town, we went straight to the police station, told them our friends had disappeared, that something in the woods had taken them. The officers were sympathetic, but skeptical. They took our statements, promised to organize a search party. We led them back to the cabin, showed them where everything had happened, but there was no evidence. No bodies, no blood, no signs of struggle. The ceiling we'd seen ripped open was intact. The doors we'd seen smashed were whole. Even the scratch marks on the upstairs windows were gone. The police searched the surrounding woods for 2 days and found nothing. No trace of Matt, Amanda, or Jen. Eventually, they concluded our friends had wandered off and gotten lost. Probably fell into a ravine or encountered a bear. Tragic accidents. They'd keep the case open but held out little hope. Kevin, Sarah, and I knew better. We knew what had really happened. But how could we explain it? Who would believe us? A week later, I received a package in the mail. No return address, just my name and address in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single photograph, printed on old paper. It showed the cabin at Stillwater Lake, but the photo was old, dated from the 1950s based on the faded colors and style. In the photo, standing at the tree line in the background, barely visible, was the same tall, dark figure. And written on the back of the photo in that same unfamiliar handwriting were 3 words: "The boundary holds." I showed it to Sarah and Kevin. We met at a coffee shop, the 3 of us looking haggard and haunted. None of us had been sleeping well. Kevin had dark circles under his eyes and had lost weight. Sarah jumped at every unexpected sound. We were all damaged by what we'd seen, what we'd survived. What do we do with this? Sarah asked, holding the photo. We can't tell anyone. They already think we're crazy or lying. Kevin took the photo and studied it. We remember them. Matt, Amanda, Jen. We make sure they're not forgotten. And we make sure no one else ever rents that cabin. We tried. We really did. Kevin tracked down the property owner and tried to warn them, but the cabin was being listed for rent again within a month. Amanda's name was still on the booking, still listed as a primary renter, like she'd never disappeared. We left reviews online warning people about the cabin, about the woods, about what happened, but they were deleted within days. The property listing stayed clean, perfect 5-star reviews, beautiful photos, like it was protected somehow, or like the thing in the woods wanted more visitors, wanted more people to violate the boundary so it could collect payment. I think about that sometimes, about how many people might have stayed at that cabin over the years, how many had heeded the warnings in the guest book and left before the 3rd night, how many hadn't been so lucky. 3 for 6, equal measure. I dream about Matt being pulled to the ceiling, about Amanda running into the dark woods, about Jen choosing to sacrifice herself. I wake up screaming sometimes, and Sarah holds me until the shaking stops. We both carry the weight of survival, the guilt of being the ones who made it out. The boundary holds. Whatever that thing is, whatever agreement was made in 1847, it's still enforced, still protected, and the cabin sits right in the middle of it, a trap for anyone who doesn't understand what they're walking into. Sometimes I wonder if we should go back, if we should try to destroy the cabin, burn it down, eliminate the lure that draws people into that territory. But I know it wouldn't matter. The boundary existed before the cabin and will exist long after. The thing in the woods doesn't need the cabin. It just needs people to cross the line. And people always will. Because we don't see the warnings, don't believe in things that operate outside our understanding of the world. We think we can go anywhere, build anywhere, take anything, and sometimes something takes back. 6 months after we escaped the cabin, I still couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed too dark, every forest too quiet. Sarah and I had moved to a new apartment in the city, as far from trees and wilderness as we could get. But distance didn't matter. The nightmares followed us. Kevin called one evening, his voice tight with panic. "I've been getting messages," he said. "Photos sent my phone from unknown numbers. They're of me, at work, at home, walking down the street. Someone's following me." My blood ran cold. "What kind of photos?" "The same kind as before, showing me going about my day, but there's always something in the background, a tall shadow that shouldn't be there." He paused. "Chris, I think it followed us. I think we didn't really escape." I wanted to tell him he was imagining things, that we were safe now, but I've been seeing things too, shapes in my peripheral vision that vanish when I look directly at them. Symbols that look like the boundary markers appearing in random places, carved into telephone poles, scratched into subway walls. Sarah had seen them too, but we'd been pretending they weren't real, that our minds were just playing tricks on us. Kevin came over that night and showed us the photos. They were exactly as he described, normal pictures of his daily life, except for the dark figure that appeared in each one, always in the background, always watching. In some photos, it was barely visible, just a shadow among shadows. In others, it was more distinct, that same impossible height, those same wrong proportions. Why is it still following us? Kevin asked. We paid the price. 3 for 6. We should be free. But as I studied the photos, I noticed something. In each image, the figure was standing near a tree. Even in the urban environments Kevin frequented, it positioned itself near the few trees that existed: street trees, park trees, ornamental plantings. Like it needed them, used them as anchor points. It's not just following you, I said slowly. Look at the dates on these photos. They're all from the last 2 weeks. I pulled out my own phone and scrolled through my camera roll. They're in a photo Sarah had taken of me at a restaurant 3 days ago. Visible in the window reflection behind me was the same figure. I showed them a picture from a week ago, me at the grocery store. There it was again, standing near the potted plants by the entrance. It's following all of us, Sarah whispered. All 3 of us who survived. That night we tried to figure out why. Kevin pulled up the old survey map on his laptop, the one he'd photographed at the cabin. The boundary was established by treaty in 1847, he said, pointing to the notations. But what if the treaty wasn't just about that specific piece of land? What if it was about the people who violated it? He zoomed in on the fine print. Here, it says, violators shall carry the mark until balance is restored. We thought balance was restored when it took 3 of us. But what if we're wrong? What if by surviving we inherited a debt? Sarah was pacing the apartment. So what? It's going to follow us forever? Stalk us until what? Until we die. I thought about the guest book entries, about the people who'd left before the 3rd night. Had they been followed too? Or had we triggered something different by staying, by being present when the payment was collected? We need to go back, I said. Both of them stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Go back? To that cabin? Are you insane? Kevin demanded. Not to stay? I explained. But to finish this. To understand what it wants from us. We can't live like this, constantly looking over our shoulders, waiting for it to decide our debt isn't paid. It took 2 weeks to work up the courage. We rented a car and drove back to the Ozarks, to that dirt road leading into the forest. The cabin was still there, still being rented out according to the website. Currently unoccupied, the listing said, available for immediate booking. We parked at the end of the dirt road and walked the final mile on foot, none of us willing to drive all the way in. The forest was as beautiful and menacing as I remembered. The same oppressive silence, the same sense of being watched. When the cabin came into view, it looked peaceful in the afternoon sunlight, like a postcard, not a nightmare. The symbols on the trees were still there, boundary markers carved deep into the bark. We approached slowly, stopping at the tree line. What now? Sarah asked. We can't just knock and ask it what it wants. But I was looking at the ground near the largest marked tree. There, barely visible under fallen leaves, were grooves in the earth, the same spot where the message 3 for 6 had been carved 6 months ago. I knelt down and brushed away the leaves. New words had been carved, recently enough that the earth was still dark and damp. Witnesses carry the mark. We're witnesses, Kevin said. We saw what happened. We know the boundary exists, know what enforces it. He looked at the forest around us. Maybe that's why it's following us. Not to punish us, but to remind us, to make sure we remember, make sure we tell others. I thought about our attempts to warn people, to leave reviews and contact the property owner. Every effort had been blocked, erased. But it won't let us warn anyone. It deletes our reviews, makes people think we're crazy when we try to explain. Sarah was reading the carved message again. Maybe that's not what it wants. Maybe it doesn't want us to warn people away. Maybe it wants us to bring people here. The thought made my skin crawl. Why would it want that? Because the boundary needs to be enforced, she said. The treaty needs to be maintained. And if people stop coming, stop violating it, then the Guardian has no purpose. No one to judge, no payment to collect. Maybe it needs violators as much as it needs to punish them. We stood at the tree line as the sun began to set, understanding settling over us like a cold blanket. We were marked now, bound to this place and its guardian, not as victims, but as witnesses, as proof that the boundary was real, that the consequences were real. We could never truly leave because we carried the knowledge with us, and that knowledge, that mark, would follow us until we died or until we found someone to take our place. The figure appeared at the far edge of the clearing, standing between two pines. It didn't approach, just watched us with that ancient, patient stillness. I thought about Matt, Amanda, and Jen, about whether they were truly gone or if they'd become part of the forest, part of the Guardian itself, about whether the same fate awaited us eventually. We should go, I said quietly. We backed away from the tree line, from the cabin, from the watching figure. But we all knew the truth now. The boundary would follow us wherever we went. The mark was permanent. We were bound to this place, to its guardian, to its ancient rules. For the rest of our lives, we would carry the weight of what we'd witnessed. And every shadow would remind us that the forest was watching, waiting, patient as stone. The figure stood watching us from the tree line as we backed away, and I knew running was pointless. We'd tried running for 6 months, and it had followed us anyway. Whatever this thing wanted from us, we needed to face it now or spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. Wait, I said, stopping Sarah and Kevin from retreating further. We need to talk to it, need to understand what it wants. Kevin looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Talk to it? Chris, that thing killed our friends. It's been stalking us for months. You can't negotiate with something like that. But Sarah understood what I meant. She'd always been the brave one, the one who faced problems head-on instead of running. He's right. We can't keep living in fear. If we're marked, if we're bound to this place somehow, we need to know the rules. She took a step toward the tree line, toward the watching figure. We came back. We're here. What do you want from us? For a long moment, nothing happened. The forest was completely still, not even the wind moving through the branches. Then the figure moved forward, stepping out of the shadows between the trees. In the fading daylight, I could see it more clearly than ever before. It was tall, at least 8 feet, its body covered in bark and moss like it had grown from the forest itself. Its face was a twisted knot of wood, but I could see eye sockets, a suggestion of features beneath the organic surface. And when it spoke, the voice was like wind through dead trees, dry and ancient and full of weight. You witnessed the payment, it said. You carry the knowledge. The boundary must be remembered. I found my voice, though it came out shaky. We tried to warn people, tried to tell them about this place. But you won't let us. You delete everything we post. You make people think we're crazy. The figure tilted its head, a gesture that was almost human. Warnings are not enough. People do not listen to warnings. They see beauty and they take it, regardless of cost. The cabin draws them in, and I enforce what was agreed upon. This is the balance. So you want us to what? Kevin demanded. Keep quiet? Pretend this never happened? The figure was silent for a moment, and when it spoke again, there was something that might have been sadness in that hollow voice. I want you to remember, to carry the weight of what you witnessed, to understand that some boundaries exist for reasons beyond human understanding, and violating them has consequences. It raised one long arm and pointed at each of us in turn. You 3 survived because the payment was made by others, but you carry the mark now. You are bound to this place, to this knowledge for the rest of your days. Sarah stepped forward, close enough now that she could have touched the thing, if she wanted to. What are you? Are you a spirit? A demon? What? The figure lowered its arm. I am what I have always been. Guardian, enforcer of the treaty. When your people came to these lands, agreements were made with those who lived here before. Sacred places were marked, boundaries established. Your people broke most of those agreements, but some of us remained to enforce what was promised. I am one of the last. It gestured to forests around us. This territory was set aside, protected, no development, no violation. But your kind cannot help yourselves. You see empty land, and you must fill it, must own it, must bend it to your will. I thought about the cabin, about the property developer who'd ignored the old survey maps and built right in the middle of protected territory. The person who built the cabin, did you kill them too? The Guardian shook its head slowly. They never stayed long enough to face payment. Hired builders to do the work, never spent a night here themselves. Cowards often escape consequences by making others bear the cost. But those who occupy the violation, who sleep in the cabin and walk this land, they pay what is owed. Kevin was shaking with anger. Matt didn't build that cabin. Neither did Amanda or Jen. They were innocent. The Guardian's wooden face was impossible to read, but its voice carried something that might have been regret. No one who violates a boundary is innocent. Ignorance is not innocence. The treaty does not care about intent, only about actions. 6 people crossed into protected territory. 3 paid the price. 3 were marked as witnesses. This is a balance that was agreed upon generations before any of you were born. Sarah's voice was quiet but steady. What happens to the people you take? Matt, Amanda, Jen, where are they? The Guardian turned its attention to her. They are with me now, part of the forest, part of the boundary, part of what I protect. Their essence feeds the land they violated. They are not suffering. They simply are changed, transformed, returned to the earth in a way your kind no longer understands. It paused. Would you like to see them? Before any of us could answer, the forest around us began to change. The trees seemed to shift, their bark becoming more distinct, their shapes more defined. And in 3 of the trees closest to us, I started to see faces. Not carved faces, but faces formed from the wood itself, as if the trees had grown around human features. One was Matt. I recognized the shape of his jaw, the set of his eyes, even though they were now wood and bark. Another was Amanda, her face peaceful, almost serene, emerging from the trunk of a large oak. And the third was Jen, smaller, her features delicate, even transformed into living wood. Oh, God, Kevin breathed. They're still here. They've been here the whole time. The Guardian nodded. They're the forest now. And when you die, wherever you die, your essence will return here as well. The mark ensures it. You are bound to this place eternally. This is the price of witnessing the payment. Sarah's face was pale but determined. There has to be a way to break this. To free ourselves and free them. Every curse has a loophole. Every deal has an escape clause. The Guardian was quiet for a long time. When it finally spoke, its voice was softer than before. There is one way, but it requires sacrifice beyond what you have already witnessed. It gestured to the cabin. The violation can only be undone by destroying what violated the boundary and restoring what was taken. The cabin must be removed, the land returned to its natural state, and someone must choose to remain as guardian in my place. I have held this post for 179 years. I was a man once, like you. I made the choice to become this, so that my family could go free. If one of you makes the same choice, I can finally rest, and those who were taken can be released. The 3 of us looked at each other, the weight of that choice settling over us. One of us could volunteer to become the Guardian, to take its place, to spend potentially centuries enforcing the boundary, and in exchange, Matt, Amanda, and Jen would be freed, return to whatever afterlife awaited them. And the two who didn't volunteer would have their marks removed, would be able to live normal lives again. How do we destroy the cabin? I asked. The Guardian tilted its head toward the structure. Fire. Burn it to the foundation. Remove every trace of human construction. Return the land to wilderness. Only then can the transfer of guardianship occur. Kevin was already shaking his head. No way. I'm not spending eternity as some kind of forest monster. There has to be another way. But Sarah was looking at me, and I was looking at her, and we both knew someone had to make this choice. Matt was my brother. He died because I'd suggested this trip, because I wanted to reconnect with old friends. Amanda and Jen had died trying to protect others. They deserved to be freed from their wooden prisons. I'll do it, Sarah said before I could speak. No, I said immediately. Sarah, you can't. She grabbed my hands, her eyes fierce. Chris, you have a sister who needs you. You have parents who are still alive. I don't have anyone. My family's gone. This is my choice. But Kevin stepped forward. Neither of you has to do this. I'm the one who should stay. Amanda booked the cabin because I suggested this reunion in the first place. If I hadn't pushed for everyone to get together, none of this would have happened. This is my responsibility. The Guardian watched us argue, its ancient face unreadable. The choice must be made willingly, with full understanding of what it means. You'll become like me, neither alive nor dead, bound to this territory, enforcing the boundary until someone else volunteers to take your place. It could be years. It could be centuries. You will watch the world change while you remain unchanged, alone except for the trees and the violators you must punish. We stood there in the gathering darkness, 3 people trying to decide which one of us would sacrifice everything. In the end, it was Sarah who settled it. She walked to the cabin, pulled out the lighter Kevin had been using for cigarettes, and set fire to the curtains in the front window. The flames caught quickly, spreading through the old wooden structure. Sarah, I shouted, running toward her, but she backed away from the growing fire, stood next to the Guardian, and looked at me with tears streaming down her face. I love you, Chris, but I can't watch you become that thing. And I can't let Kevin sacrifice himself for a decision we all made together. This is my choice. Please respect it. The cabin burned fast, flames reaching toward the sky as the structure collapsed in on itself. The heat was intense, driving Kevin and me back toward the tree line. Sarah stood with the Guardian, untouched by the flames, watching the violation burn away. As the last walls fell and the fire consumed everything, the 3 trees containing our friends began to change. The wood shifted, cracked, and 3 human forms stepped out. Matt, Amanda, and Jen, looking confused and whole, returned to their human shapes. They saw us and started to move forward, but the Guardian raised a hand to stop them. You are freed, it said to them. The payment has been answered with greater sacrifice. You may return to your lives, though you will remember nothing of your time as part of the forest. The mark is lifted from all of you. Matt looked at me, recognition flickering in his eyes. Chris, what's happening? But even as he spoke, his memories were fading. I could see the confusion replacing the fear, the trauma being erased. Within moments, he looked around like someone waking from a dream, unsure how he'd gotten here. The Guardian turned to Sarah. Are you certain? Once the transformation begins, it cannot be reversed. Sarah looked at me one more time, smiled through her tears, and nodded. I'm certain. Just promise me you'll live a good life. Chris, all of you, promise me you'll make this sacrifice mean something. Before I could respond, the Guardian placed his wooden hand on Sarah's shoulder. She gasped, and I watched in horror as bark began to spread across her skin, as her feet rooted into the ground, as her features started to transform. Sarah, I screamed, trying to run to her, but Kevin held me back. The Guardian was changing too, becoming less solid, more translucent. "She is the new Guardian now," it said, its voice fading, "and I am finally free. Thank you." The figure dissolved into mist, into nothing, released at last from its centuries of service. Sarah stood where it had been, already more tree than human, her face still recognizable but hardening into wood. "Go," she said, her voice taking on that same hollow, ancient quality. "Take them and go. Live. Be happy. Remember me, but don't come back." Her transformation was complete. Sarah stood the tree line, 8 feet tall, covered in bark and moss, her wooden face frozen in an expression that might have been peace. Matt, Amanda, and Jen had no memory of what had happened. They thought they'd gotten lost in the woods during our camping trip and were confused about the missing time. Kevin and I loaded them into the cars and drove away, watching Sarah's figure disappear into forest. The mark was gone. I could feel its absence, like a weight lifted from my chest. We were free to live normal lives again. But the cost of that freedom stood guard over a boundary in the Ozark woods, alone and eternal, sacrificing everything so we could go home. I never went back to that forest, never tried to visit Sarah or communicate with her new form. She'd made her choice and I had to respect it by living the life she'd given me. But sometimes, late at night, I think about her standing among the trees, watching over the boundary, enforcing the treaty. And I wonder if she's lonely, if she regrets her decision, if she thinks about the life she gave up. I hope she knows I think about her every day. I hope she knows her sacrifice meant everything. I hope she finds peace in the role she chose, guarding something ancient and important, something bigger than any of us. The boundary holds, and Sarah holds it, forever.